D-dimer. D-dimer immune-specific, as you can remember, factor 13A is the fibrin stabilizing factor. So when plasminogen is combined with the TPA or the tissue plasminogen activator, so plasminogen will be converted to plasmin. So guys, if I ask you what is the precursor of plasmin, so it is plasminogen. So plasmin is capable of cleaving fibrin. And once fibrin is cleaved, the products are the D-dimers. So there are many kinds of D-dimers, but the most important of them all, the most commonly assayed is the D-dimer. So D-dimer is normally 2 nanogram per ml. However, we consider this as an increased level if it's already more than 200 nanogram per ml. So, bakit ba nag-i-increase yung D-dimer? Perhaps if we have active fibrinolysis, such as in cases of systemic fibrinolysis, in cases of thrombosis, such as acute and chronic DIC. So DIC stands for disseminated intravascular coagulopathy, deep vein thrombosis, pulmonary embolism, and in fact, the dimer can also be utilized to predict stroke or if you want to monitor thrombolytic therapy. So the specimen of choice for the dimer is called plasma. So we're using plasma as the specimen of choice. So in doing the D-dimer assay, so the principle is microlatex particle, which serves as an indicator or carrier in buffered saline, are coated with monoclonal anti-D-dimer antibody. AB is specific for D-dimer. So coated particles are agglutinated by the patient's plasma D-dimer. So in this particular scenario, since it is an immunoassay, D-dimer will serve as an antigen, okay, MAB or the monoclonal anti-specific D-dimer antibodies, of course, would serve as the antibody, while the micro-latex particles, okay, will serve as the indicator or the carrier of the antibodies so that the agglutination will be visible. So agglutination here is not measured by your naked eye. So there is a machine that would do it for you. So that particular machine would have the principle of doing turbidometric or nephelometric technology. So agglutination, therefore, is tantamount to turbidity. So the sensitivity varies depending on the D-dimer antibody and the detection method. So up to 10 nanogram per ml. So there are different ways of reporting D-dimer. So which means that there are several kinds unit of measurement. So it can be measured as DDU, so D-dimer units, or FEU. So when we say FEU, fibrinogen equivalent units, depending on the monoclonal antibody target. So the decision limit, if you are using DDU as the unit of measurement, the decision unit is up to 240 nanogram per ml. But if you are using FEU, we are the decision limit is up to 500 nanogram per ml. What does it mean? Ano ba yung decision limit? The decision limit, which means kapag lumampas yung patient sa 240 DDU, ibig sabihin, that patient is already a candidate to be considered as DIC. Or kaya lumampas naman siya sa 500 nanogram per ml. So ang ibig sabihin niyan, yung patient na yan is candidate to have the so-called DIC. Now, in speaking of DIC, meron tayong tinatawag na DIC panel. Okay, as you can see in the table, there are 7 criteria. Okay, there are 7 criteria in the DIC panel. First criterion is the platelet count. So, platelet count should be below 150,000. Bakit siya tinawag na thrombocytopenia? Paano siya naging criteria? Kasi nga 'di ba, if there is thrombosis, platelets are already activated. So mas konti lang yung mame-measure sa blood because platelets are already part of the thrombus. Okay. In the peripheral blood smear, you'll be able to see anemia with cystocytes. Okay, so cystocytes, if you remember with poikilocytosis, cystocyte is a fragmented RBC. The prothrombin time. The prothrombin time is prolonged. It is more than 14 seconds. Fourth criteria is your PTT or the partial thromboplastin time. In DIC panel, it is more than 35 seconds. Number 5 criterion is the thrombin time on the reptilase time using the Russell Viper venom from, di ba alam niyo na yun, from the snake. So that is prolonged. So why is it reptilase time is preferred over the thrombin time? Well, again, reptilase time is not affected by heparin therapy. So in cases of DIC, it is prolonged and the fibrinogen level is also decreased. Now, number 6 criterion is the most important criterion for the diagnosis of DIC, and that is your D-dimer. Again, it depends on what unit of measurement are you using. Are you using DDU or are you using FEU? But nonetheless, if you're using DDU, it should be more than 240 nanogram per ml. If it's FEU, it should be more than 500 nanogram per ml. As a matter of fact, patients with DIC would have the D-dimer level somewhere between 10,000 to 20,000 nanogram per ml. And then the seventh criterion is the fibrinogen level. The fibrinogen level is decreased less than 220 milligrams per DL because fibrinogen is, according to this table, is considered to be as an acute phase reactant. Okay, so again, DIC is not just seen, D-dimer, increase in D-dimer is not just seen in DIC, it is also seen in deep venous thrombosis and pulmonary embolism. There is particular test that was developed by Thermo Fisher. It is a laboratory diagnostic company in the United States. So we call it the ThromboWellCo. So it's a qualitative slide agglutination immunoassay. Qualitative lang. So it won't give you any value. So nonetheless, it utilizes polystyrene latex particle, which serves as an indicator or carrier in buffered saline, and these are coated with polyclonal antibodies specific for the DNA fragments. The advantage of this method is that you can utilize either serum or urine specimen. So agglutination is visible. However, it won't give you value. Although the threshold is said to be 2 microgram per ml, but it won't give you value. Unlike if you're using the immunoassay that I've mentioned a while ago. So clinical application is also for the diagnosis and monitoring of DIC. So let's talk about the plasminogen chromogenic substrate assay. So let's review. Plasminogen is the precursor of plasmin, right? So it is the inactive precursor of the trypsin-like proteolytic enzyme called plasmin. And plasmin plays a very important role in fibrinolysis. Plasmin is the central enzyme of the fibrinolytic pathway. So plasmin is produced in the liver and circulates as a single chain glycoprotein. So when bound to fibrin, plasminogen is converted to plasmin by the action of TPA. Okay, so TPA is the activator. So therefore in this scenario there would be two kinds of plasmin, the bound and the free plasmin. The bound plasmin means that they have been attached to the fibrin already. And since they are attached to the fibrin, then therefore they are capable of degrading fibrin. On the other hand, free plasmin can be activated by alpha 2 antiplasmin, which serves as the antagonist or the inhibitor of plasmin. So anyway, if there is an excessive fibrinolysis due to trauma, due to inflammation, we expect the patient to have an increase in plasmin. So this is seen during, for example, during bone trauma, fracture, and surgical dissection of bone, and even during cardiac surgery. Okay, so that is the plasmin. Okay, plasminogen, sorry. So, how do we assay for plasminogen? To assay for plasminogen, we are using the so-called plasminogen chromogenic substrate assay. Okay. Now remember, during hypofibrinolysis, meaning to say the activity of fibrinolysis is very minimal, there would be an increase in PAI-1. PAI-1 stands for plasminogen activator inhibitor 1. Remember, PAI-1 serves as antagonist or inhibitor. Okay? So during hypofibrinolysis, there would be increase in PAI-1 or decreased TPA or plasminogen level. Hypofibrinolysis can be seen in conditions such as congenital plasminogen deficiencies, acquired plasminogen deficiencies such as DIC, and acute promyelocytic leukemia. If you remember during your HEMA 1, acute promyelocytic leukemia is also known as M3. Now, let's talk about the principle. So, the principle is about quantitative measurement of plasminogen using a chromogenic substrate enzyme method. The first thing that should come into your mind when we talk about chromogenic is there is a color change. Okay. So, the principle is when plasminogen is combined with streptokinase. Okay, so there would be the so-called plasmin streptokinase complex. And then this particular complex will act on rPNA. What is rPNA? R there stands for peptide sequence. It is indeed a sequence of three amino acid, namely valine, leucine, lysine. Okay. And then the PNA there stands for para-nitroaniline. It's a chromophore, which means that there is a specific color. So, going back to the equation, as you can see, plasmin streptokinase acts on rPNA, and the products are RCOH, that's our R-carboxyl plus PNA. So there would be a change in color. Particularly, it will become yellow. Now, the thing is, the color intensity is proportional to the plasminogen concentration. Meaning, the darker or the more intense the color is, then the higher the concentration of plasminogen. Having said that, the normal values of plasminogen is between 5 to 5 to 13.5 milligrams per DL. Okay. So, what is the clinical application? So, if plasminogen is decreased, this may imply thrombolytic therapy, or the patient may possibly be in DIC, and since it is being uh, produced in the liver, so this can also indicate hepatitis and cancer. So it is also seen in cases of thrombosis. Now, this one is also increased during systemic fibrinolysis. So this okay, acute inflammation, and during the vascular endothelial cells, otherwise seen in the blood vessel. It has a very short half-life, only 3 minutes, and the plasma concentration is 5 nanogram per ml. Now, I want you also to be familiar with urokinase, since it would have the same physiologic function as TPA, no? So, urokinase is a vascular endothelial cell. The half-life is 7 minutes, and the plasma concentration is between 2 to 4 per ml. So, an enzyme, serine protease, so again, pag sinabi natin protease enzyme, this can cleave protein. So, the enzyme serine protease that form ternary complex with bound plasminogen at the surface of fibrin can activate plasminogen. And once plasminogen is activated, this will form plasmin. And as we all know, plasmin can degrade any thrombi or thrombus for that matter. So, the endothelial cells, on the other hand, can secrete PAI1, plasminogen activator inhibitor 1. So, PAI1 can inactivate TPA and urokinase. Kasi nga, yung TPA, T, kasi nga, yung PAI1 is considered to be as an antagonist or inhibitor. Sorry. So, to measure TPA, you need a specimen. However, you have to consider the diurnal variation. What do we mean by diurnal variation? Which means that the value of TPA may vary during daytime and may be affected by various physiologic activities, for example, during strenuous exercise. So that's what we meant by the diurnal variation. And it is unstable in vitro. Okay, again, the reason why is because of its possibility of binding with PAI1 after blood collection. Again, PAI1 is the inhibitor of TPA. So during collection, you should instruct the patient before you collect blood. Patient should be at rest. Do not apply tourniquet for so long. Record the collection time and apply immediate acidification of the specimen in acetate buffer. So you can apply the so-called biopool stabilite acidified citrate tube, which is produced by Diapharma. So in this particular phase, you'll be able to produce a supernatant platelet poor plasma. You can store up to negative 70 degrees centigrade. So the principle of TPA is almost the same as the plasminogen assay, because you are also using the quantitative chromogenic substrate method. So the principle is plasminogen is acted upon by TPA and soluble fibrin to form plasmin. Plasmin, on the other hand, will degrade RPNA to produce a change in color. So just like your plasminogen, the color intensity is proportional to TPA activity. So the normal range is at least 1.1 units for TPA activity and 14 nanogram per ml for TPA antigen concentration. So remember, TPA is the primary mediator of fibrinolysis, which means that it is decreased the a decreased level of TPA is not good because this may predispose the patient to have an increased risk of myocardial infarction, stroke, and deep vein thrombosis. Impaired fibrinolysis is also associated with it, and this may also be associated with deep vein thrombosis and MI. Okay, so let us review the assay for plasminogen activator inhibitor 1. So again, let's review PAI1. PAI1 is produced by vascular endothelial cells, so which means it is produced in the blood vessels and hepatocytes. So this circulates in plasma bound to vitronectin. So the plasma concentration of PAI1 is 10 nanogram per ml, and there's also a diurnal variation. So once it is inactive, it is being stored in high concentration in platelets, and the inactivity will free the TPA. Okay. So an increase in PAI1 indicates the presence of venous thrombosis and cardiovascular risk factor, and it is also a marker of senescence or being old. So in fact, there was this in an incidence of complete PAI1 deficiency in old order Amish population found in eastern and southern Indiana. So they were able to detect that there are certain group of population that have a totally deficient value of PAI1. So to confirm the total PA1, we need to perform the serum PA1 assay. So the principle is also utilizing the so-called chromogenic substrate enzyme method. Again, change in color. However, in this case, TPA is combined with PA1, and the complex would have residual TPA. Residual TPA are those that are not able to bind with the TPA. So the residual TPA and the soluble fibrin will convert plasminogen into plasmin. And then the plasmin will convert RPNA into a R-carboxyl and PNA. There would be a change in color. But take note this time, the intensity of the color is inversely proportional to the PAI1 level. Why? Because pag sinabi natin inversely proportional, for example, the more intense the color is, the lesser the concentration of the PAI1. Kasi nga, it is an antagonist or inhibitor of the TPA. So again, just a reminder, when collecting the specimen, you have to collect the specimen while the patient is at rest and acidified right away the citrate tube, centrifuge immediately to make a platelet poor plasma and avoid in vitro release of platelet PAI1. So that's about it, and thank you very much. So I'll see you tomorrow, guys. For the a very short grades consultation. I'll see you tomorrow. So yeah, okay. So, any question? May question ba? Are you sharing devices?
Yes po din.
For the reason I'm asking is for attendance purposes. Sino yung nag-share ng device?